Hey, welcome to The Humble Pie, and I'm very, very happy to have a friend as well as an esteemed guest, Mr. David Ashdown, MD of Clarion Events in Africa. We're here to talk about all things in the sort of how the sector has changed when it comes to live events, when it comes to the way that people are networking and engaging, specifically in Africa, but specifically in the industries that Clarion Events Africa, which is Dave's business, has kind of evolved across mining, agriculture, energy, utilities, and so on. So really happy that you could make the time to join me today, David.
Afternoon, Alex. Yeah. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, anytime, absolutely. So thanks for jumping onto The Humble Pie. I suppose just for some background then, Clarion Events has, been, an industry leader very much in trade publications, digital publications, events such as DRC Mining Week, Africa Utility Week, Africa Mining Forum, and you've had a unique blend of kind of adding thought leadership, a lot of online engagement, a lot of digital content engagement, and also until recently live events into an integrated strategy for a lot of the big private and public sector entities across Africa. I'm excited to talk a little bit about that mix and how it's worked, but of course as well, the sort of the giant 1,000-pound gorilla in the room, which is COVID-19, and how that's changed for the better and for the worse as well. But how is business now? How are you coping? How are you faring right now?
So, good question, actually, and I think it's important that we put a time frame to the conversation today, because a year ago today, we were probably about 4 or 5 days into the first level 1 lockdown in South Africa.
Wow.
So our world changed probably around end of February, beginning of March 2020. And we were predominantly and we still are, a live events business. Live events got canned.
Yeah.
They were cancelled for the year. We are still not in a position 12 months later where we're able to deliver live events, certainly into South Africa, but also at the moment into Africa as well. And putting a time frame to it, where did it all start? I was in Zanzibar on holiday at the end of February,
as one is,
beginning of March 2020, enjoying a fabulous retreat with my family to get away from and prepare myself for the portfolio in 2020 and where we were going as a business, opportunity to do some diving on the reef over there. And unfortunately, I think I travelled back from the UK when the first COVID reports were coming out of China, and our industry started to go, oh, this is interesting. What's this going to mean? Is it really going to take off? And then it started to accelerate, and then it was outside of China, then it was into other jurisdictions, and then it got to the UK, and things just started to move at such a speed that it was probably the beginning of March when we were away, and then I got the phone call from my team here saying, David, it looks like our events are at risk. There's talk about a shutdown. What are we doing? We have events planned for May. We've got events planned for June. So my well-earned break and enjoyment of spending time in Zanzibar with my family and some diving was quite quickly taken away, with me spending probably about 80% of my time on my phone talking with my team about what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I guess that sort of crisis management piece.
Absolutely.
Now 12 months later, by the way, I did get one dive actually during that week, and that was it.
And you're not talking about the industry diving, just you personally.
So the industry took a massive dive, and I didn't. Yeah. I certainly didn't dive as deep as the industry. Let's put it like that. We're 12 months later now, so we haven't run a live event in the 12 months following the start of the pandemic. It's been an interesting journey, and I'm not gonna go into a place where I say it's been a devastating journey for us. It has been incredibly hard, but I like to look at it from a perspective of learning as much as anything. Our industry
Yeah.
probably was the live events industry, scaled exhibitions. If I'm honest, I think the industry was due a disruption or a disruptor, however you look at it.
Right.
I'm not sure COVID wanted to be the disruptor that would ultimately reshape the way that industry professionals connect and engage at a typically a trade event environment or in a face-to-face environment. But there's certainly been an acceleration of digital engagement in the
Yeah.
last 12 months, which I think is ultimately very good for the industry.
And
Listen,
sorry, yeah. I was just going to say, maybe also just for some context, for those who might not be as kind of familiar with where the live events industry was or has been, or at least what Clarion has been doing, not only in Africa but around the world, which is these large, obviously in-person conference type events but at the same time they're also sort of exhibitions, where there's various activities on display for a number of days, often in large conference halls and in exhibition theaters across cities across the world. So they're really big sort of scale events, and obviously they make up, or at least they made up a huge portion of your business, and a lot of the activity and the time that was spent by your team running these things, all of the organization. And so it's kind of like, telling a car mechanic, well, there aren't going to be any cars left. So it must have felt for a little while at least that the rug was pulled completely. And how did you deal with that? Just sort of emotionally, what was it like for you? What was running through your head when you're on the phone?
So it was really difficult emotionally, actually, for a number of different reasons. One, because you start to think, okay, there's a balance sheet responsibility over here, and how's the company going to perform? But more importantly than that, for me, there was a leadership responsibility in the organisation, and how the following. Well, at the time, we probably thought it was 6 months, and then it extended to 12 months, and now we're sort of 18 to 24, 30 month sort of looking forward from that perspective. It was how the team are going to manage and how the team are going to stay together, because everybody in the organisation in March went from, we work in an office location, we're comfortable within our space, I report for my duties, and I do what's responsible I'm responsible to do and what's expected of me in the company, to I'm working from home.
Yeah.
The culture shock was huge.
Yeah.
The fear, especially in, I guess very much in our industry, but in a lot of other industries as well, was, how secure is my job?
Yeah.
Am I going to lose my job? If I lose my job, I'm going to lose my opportunity to look after my family. I've got these many responsibilities that I'm financially engaged to be responsible for. The what if scenario, I think, became prevalent for everybody. And it was at that point that I started to think more about the leadership qualities to be displayed from me to my team and to the organization.
Right.
More so than the financial peak was going on in the background, but that was between myself and the finance director for the group and the company.
Yeah.
So we started talking about taking an opportunity to settle. So we didn't make any rash decisions. We didn't want to make any decisions about the portfolio at that specific point a year ago. It was a case of, okay, so let's breathe. Let's take some time to consider what's coming, and let's make some decisions based on fact and not on assumption. I think it's really very easy today in the world that we live in, where we're always on, we're always connected, we're always in demand, to actually make decisions just like that. Yeah. I'm going to do this, actually I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go that way, I'm going to go that way. And that at that point last year, it was a case of, okay, no, composure, take a breath, the company's financially stable, let's see where we are in 3 months' time. It was obvious that we were going to be required to make postponements to our live portfolio. And thank you for I guess, defining what it is we do as a business. We're a business-to-business events organizer, or a live conference and live exhibition. So we're not in the concert industry. We're not in the sporting industry. So we have companies that spend money with us on exhibition space or sponsorships, and they have a product to sell to or to promote to or to engage with an audience that's buying that product. And we major in the energy space and in the mining space across Africa. So we had an event in Cape Town scheduled for May 2020, and we had an event in the DRC in Lubumbashi for the mining sector in June 2020. We didn't make any immediate decisions in March, but you could imagine if we're running an event in May and June, there is a forward planning exercise by companies that are operating with us that they want to plan their freighting, their stand design, their company, their staff. They're starting to make financial commitments on their side. So we had to work relatively quickly to say, okay, so what are we going to do and how are we going to do this? Now, at the time, the most sensible thing felt like we'll postpone from the first half into the second half of the year, and that's the action we took. So we kind of put the projects into a suspension, if you like. It was like, well, we know we're going to deliver, because we didn't really have an understanding back in the beginning of 2020 how long the pandemic was going to last. So we moved everything across. I think we scheduled for October and November, and I'm only talking about our scaled products here.
Yes.
Then we started to run through the rest of the year. We put things into a holding pattern. We looked at our digital opportunities. I have an advantage, maybe I'll go into it in a little bit more detail, that I have a media division attached to the business here, where we already had experience delivering digital content to the audiences that we work with. So we engaged that, we ramped that up, we put more focus on there. The idea being within the leadership team here that we stayed close to customers. We wanted to understand what our customers were going through, where their pain points were, and how we could support them. Not necessarily from a revenue first perspective, but this was about an understanding what our industries that we support. What are you going through as an industry, and how can we support you, or how can we be there for you during this time? And really and then it gets to a point later in the year where you can start to talk about how we can support from a promotional perspective or a marketing perspective, and how we can help those companies that were financially impacted to regain market share or potentially take market share from elsewhere.
Yeah.
So we postponed to May and June, from May and June into, I think it was September and October. But then later in the year, probably around July time, it became obvious that the second half shows were going to be at risk. There was going to be a further wave.
Yeah.
So we ended up postponing all of our live events for 2020.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, that creates a challenge on the infrastructure of the business as well, because we're a project team-based business, and if we're not running our projects, there's a requirement to right-size the organisation so it's sustainable. And that's unfortunately a process that we went through in May last year, and then again in February this year as well.
Yeah.
So we're now scheduled, and we now know that running our live events in May and June this year is not going to be possible because of a number of factors. One, South Africa, COVID. Yes, the rates are down very low at the moment. I think there's less than 1,000 cases a day, which is fantastic. So we're very much out of the second wave, but I think we all know that there's a third wave coming before there's a full vaccination program in this country. But the decision to postpone in 21 is not so much taken from that perspective. It's taken from companies that we work with saying, look, we're hesitant, we're reluctant to. We've got travel bans in the country, across countries within our company. We would be happier if it is delayed to 2022. We're still committed to work with you, and we value your product, and we value what your product brings. Yeah, but we've got to be cautious in the way that we move things forward. So we took a very difficult decision to postpone our projects through to 2022. So we're actually, for our scaled products in our business, we are now 15, 16 months away from delivering live again. So this year is very much it's become the pivot to digital. And it's about that disruptor piece I mentioned earlier. And the way that I choose to look at it, I could cry into my beer every evening and go, woe is me, what's going to happen to us? But I actually choose to embrace the disruption and use it as an opportunity to evolve our portfolios, to do things differently, to look at our industry and consider how do industry professionals want to engage in the future, and how may they engage in the future? Because I think since we're talking timestamps a lot at the moment, let's call it the live events industry for business to business events in January 2020 will never be the same again. When business events come back, they will be different than they were in January 2020. And that's something that I am massively driven to be successful in, and not to be in a position where we don't embrace the disruption as an organization and we potentially face failure in that respect.
Well, it's just on what you said. I mean, there's so many things I want to kind of unpick with what you said, but so much of it for me ties into I suppose some of the real hallmarks of good leadership. And I don't want to toot your horn, but at the same time, and I'm sure a lot of your staff and peers will agree that there's the initial sort of dealing with that terminal shock, that like, okay, crisis mode, and what do we do? And everyone kind of running around frantically. And then there's the initial thing that you mentioned, which was, to try and be the balm, to try and be the calming force where let's not make any rash decisions now. Let's try and keep a composure. Let's see what happens. Nobody can foresee what will happen. And I think that was a great move on your part. But now almost comes all the hard work, right? Which is sort of dealing with a long tail of effects of what might happen. And in the meantime, also recalibrating and refocusing the business. Where you had a certain percentage that was focused on kind of content and digital. Obviously, it was always there, but now that's had to swing the other way completely, and it also relies on people having to step up to it. Their competencies are as I suppose I don't want to say at risk, but it's important that everyone who can play and who can sort of skate to where the puck will be, so to speak, as you were saying, being to where that next kind of disruption will be, or where the bar is going to be set next. Everyone has got to be unified to go there and to reach it. And that's certainly a testament of good leadership, and you've obviously shown that. So that's awesome. And the organization benefits.
I think the positioning of what you're saying there, Alex, it for me it relates to one word, and one word that I've kept very close to my focus area for the last 12 months, and it's been something that I continually talk about with my team in all aspects, and it's the single word is communication.
Oh, yeah.
It's the value of quality communication within an organization, but also outside of your organization as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's not, and I have to be careful what I say here, it's not always front of mind for a lot of business owners and a lot of companies. Something that we make commitment to as a leadership team here is that there will be a transparency in the way that we were operating in 2020.
Right.
Because the team deserve to know. The team deserve to know if they are at risk.
Yeah.
It's not fair. If you've got to sometimes put yourself as an employee in an organisation and say, what would I want to know if I was going through this? What would I expect from my leadership, from the company that has an employment agreement with me? And I took that and I decided that it was going to be a transparent process, but it was also going to be a well communicated process, the journey that we were going on. But also, I'm fortunate to have had coaching and currently sit on a coaching course and work with coaches, and also offer some coaching services as well. But I found it was an opportunity to share some of that coaching knowledge that I'd had with the team. So I adopted a process where I was communicating with the company every day in a daily update. And sometimes they would be sort of factual about the company's position, where some of the focus areas were, where some of the wins were coming. Other days they would be musings about how I was finding life in lockdown, and guaranteed some little snippet of my world that I was sharing, I knew, because I would get replies from people in the organisation saying, "I can't believe you said that. You could have been talking directly to me one-on-one."
Yeah.
In that respect, it was very rewarding that I was able to connect with the team on a human level and not just as a managing director or a CEO level. And we shared some good stuff, and we shared things like how to manage your time when you're working remotely, because you've got to put things into context here in South Africa as well. There's massive cultural differences here compared to where some of your listeners or viewers are joining you today. And being able to go from an in-office experience with the infrastructure that the office provides to an out-of-office experience where infrastructure might not be so available. I'm using a room in my house that isn't actually an office. It might be the kitchen table. It might be a desk in the bedroom, or the coffee table in the salon area.
Yeah.
These all have a massive impact. And it's also discipline about responsibility to company, responsibility for work, not taking too much on. And then there's the dreaded homeschooling that came around, where all of us had children, well, not all of us, but a lot of us had children who were suddenly at home every day. And I've got a 3-year-old, well, she's 3 now, so she was 2 at the time. So I guess this time a year ago, my 2-year-old, Anouk, she thought every day was Saturday, because my mama and papa are at home every day, so it must be time to play. So trying to explain to a 2-year-old that mama and papa have some responsibilities that don't involve necessarily playing and doing puzzles or running around with the dog.
And it's not just
all of this extra stress and challenge.
Yeah.
So being able to break that down for the team and saying, guys, important that you make time for yourself, that you plan. And I completely understand that you've got home responsibilities, so you're feeling pressure from your home, you're feeling pressure from work, because you all own your roles within the company. So I didn't want to put all that pressure on people. So it was, try and make yourself some time, dedicate some time to your work, and we understand you're not going to be doing full days.
Yeah.
Also acknowledge how you're surviving as well, because what you're going through is not easy. And I think, honestly speaking, I think the human impact, other than the illness, it's the mental impact, it's the well-being, it's the mindfulness. That impact of COVID, we don't yet know, and we don't yet understand how that's going to affect people going forward. And so I've really tuned into the mindfulness piece, actually, about setting some small targets, setting some personal goals. I think we launched at the beginning of lockdown, we did something called the 21-day challenge, because the president announced we're going into a full lockdown for 21 days. So I launched a challenge. It's like, share with me your goals for the next 21 days. They can, but they're non-work related. You want to do some exercise, to read a couple of books, write a story. What is it you're going to do? And we kept people very much focused on that. So it kind of took away from the impact and some of the stresses and strains of people feeling.
And yeah, I mean, all that sounds like you took a lot of effort. A lot of effort went into how you wanted to approach handling ongoing communication with your staff, with interested parties, with clients even as well. Just making sure that lifeline, that tether was always there, especially when working from, like you mentioned, working from home, everybody having to adjust to a number of different things at the same time, and ultimately needing to do more with a whole lot less. Especially with those who are not used to, for example, working from home at all or ever, especially in the live event space. You're on site, you're on the floor, you're doing stuff, you're running after clients, and now suddenly you're in between 4 walls in a 15 square meter little office or converted bedroom, and now you've got to do all of that plus probably a whole lot more without the usual kind of creature comforts around the water cooler and so on that you're used to. So yeah, the communication part, the lifeline between the human interaction is so important. I'm also interested in wondering how you were able to do that with clients, because in a sense, a lot of that, I don't want to call it hand-holding, but that kind of, those sorts of, essential communication lines are absolutely key, not just for relationships and the fact that they can continue, but also the sense that People often define their environment by how others are doing, and so what was that experience like for you, managing those lifelines with clients?
So the communication, there's two elements to it. Communication verbally from you, or non-verbal, which is how you articulate something or how you communicate a topic or a discussion point. But secondly, there's the ability to listen, which is probably the more important part of communication. Right. So the conversations that we would have internally about speaking with our teams about how they are communicating with customers, clients, but also suppliers to us, it was a really easy thing to talk about. Actually, it was like, guys, this isn't about you sharing with your client or your customer. This is about your customer sharing their experience with you. So there's a really simple way to do it. So, Alex, what's happening for you today? How are you feeling? And that's it. Yeah. What's your perspective on the world going forward, Alex? There's some really simple,
just being heard,
sort of conversation starters that we were encouraging our teams to have with their customers and their suppliers. What's got your attention today? That's another one. And actually, then you just stop and you just let your customer offload, and they will talk to you about how homeschooling is a challenge, how their businesses are under pressure, where they are seeing wins, where they're not seeing a future, how they feel the world's going to evolve, etc., etc. And it's really, and it's therapeutic for your customer.
Absolutely.
And it's therapeutic for your supplier, and it's therapeutic for the people you have in your world as well. Who's in your life? When was the last time you sat down with your partner or your family and said, so how are you feeling? What's happening for you at the moment? It's amazing how that rapport piece and that relationship piece can be reinforced and can grow by just asking some really simple, caring, interested questions, rather than a dialogue that just to somebody, because then that person feels you've just added another element of pressure to someone who may already be feeling under pressure. So let people speak. That was a principle we took into it, and I think it's been, in that respect, it's been really good for us as an organisation, because my sense is that we've got closer to our customers than maybe where we were, and I continually timestamp January 2020.
Yeah,
I think today we're closer to our customers. We have a better understanding of who they are, what they do, and what they want, and how we can support them going forward. And that for me is that's another value learning from the last 12 months. And it's something that has helped us reshape our portfolio going forward as well.
Amazing.
Because we took a strategic decision halfway through last year, because we're predominantly a live events business and a conference business. So we are in-person events. We have 1/3 of our organization is a media platform. So we had print publications, and we also have media, digital publications, let's call them, on a platform that are related to both the energy and the mining space in Africa. It became very real to us last year that to build resilience into our portfolio, it's important for us to have diversified revenue streams that are non-live.
Of course.
And from that point, we then started to look at, what other routes to market do we have? What other options can we provide to our customer base to ensure that they are having communication with and reaching their target market? And that's when we started to look at the webinars. We started to look at networking platforms, podcasts, videocast, this kind of platform, content generation through the websites. So now I would say that we are positioned closer to being a business intelligence company,
right?
More than a live events business. Because if you have that conversation, you can imagine it. Hi, David, how are you? So what do you do? Oh, I run a live events and conference business. That you've walked down a dead end.
Yeah.
In the conversation, it's like, okay, oh God, life must be really hard for you. how are you guys surviving? Compared to, hi, David, what do you do for a living? I run a business intelligence company, and we have this number of different channels to support industry professionals within these core industry sectors. It's a much more open conversation.
Absolutely.
Somewhere where I want our business to be successful. moving into sort of content and knowledge, thought leadership.
And I'm interested because I've asked this question of a couple of different people who've had to undergo similar sort of transitions of different sizes as well because of everything that's happened with the pandemic. And how much of these new kind of changes, these new areas that you've now needed to embrace, was something maybe that you wanted to embrace all along, and COVID, like so many things, just happened to be an accelerator that maybe in the beginning was a little bumpy, a little bit uncomfortable, but actually all quite necessary. It was going that way anyway. It's just that COVID, stuck in a little bit of steroids on the way to kind of turbocharge it.
Yeah, listen, Alex, to coin the South African phrase, 100%. Yeah,
110% actually.
It's most definitely an accelerator. Like I said earlier, for me, it was about embracing the disruption, not rejecting the disruption. And listen, we talked about increasing digital engagement. We talked about greater value of producing content that's more relative to companies. We've talked about other channels to market where we could support better. We had our primary channel to market being live events, conferences, trade exhibitions, effectively taken away from us. So yes, of course, it accelerated change across the business. And I'm talking very much from an Africa perspective here for Clarion Events, but also from a global perspective. We absolutely, the organization went from 320 million revenues down to something because we couldn't run live events. So we've had to manage that process as a group. I like to focus more on what we're doing in Africa, and we've introduced new portfolio. We've tried stuff that has not worked, by the way. And again, sure. I'm quite comfortable with that this year. For 2020, we tried stuff that worked. We tried stuff that didn't work so well. We worked with our customers to try and give them a product or product offering that matched their requirements. We've further evolved this year, and this year specifically is going to be about delivering across other channels than live. And what I like about the fact that we've now postponed to 2022, and I can see it already, and we only made our decision about 6 weeks ago that we were going to do the postponement. It's very much cleared the thought process of the project teams. The mindset shifted. Even something as simple as saying we're a business intelligence company and we're providing value through these channels. Right. It's a real subtle shift of outlook for the teams, but also we've not created this kicking the can down the road mentality of saying, well, we're not running in May, but we are going to run in September. And then what happens is you don't really make any progress because you're in that suspended piece going, well, we're going to run in September, so we're just holding on. Now we've gone, no. Yeah. We're going to run in 2022. We believe the world is going to be a very different place in 2022. Business travel will be safer. Vaccination program in South Africa and across Africa to the largest extent will be completed. The Western world will be at least 12 months, maybe 6 months completed. So there's going to be confidence returning. And when it does return, I think live business to business events are going to return rapidly because the feedback that we're getting from customers is that they're waiting for a return to live because digital's good. Digital removes a barrier of cost and geography in attendance, but it doesn't replace the fact that it would be so much better if you and I were sat in the same room at the moment having this conversation. Yeah, absolutely. If that makes sense. Yeah, and I wish we were. Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah. I suppose everybody feels that way. There's a certain camaraderie in almost reminiscing about the way things were and so on. But I suppose looking ahead and maybe to move the conversation away from the effects of the pandemic and so on. Why are you still interested, just personally maybe, and then also perhaps about the business and what you're doing with Clarion Africa? Why are you still interested in
this particular space, let's call it business intelligence for the entities that you work with in Africa? Where is the potential still untapped for you? Why do you get excited? What are some of those things that's on your mind that you're still keen to be there and to be manning the ship?
I think part of it for me is that I'm a creative. I'm an innovator, and I like to try and do things differently. I think once projects become mainstream, they kind of lose my interest a little bit, if I'm honest. So the challenge we're going through now allows me, in many respects, to rebuild my business, and it allows me to future-proof my business,
right.
Which is that's got my attention at the moment. So what happens in 5 years' time if the next pandemic or the next issue hits the globe? How are we going to manage with it?
Yeah.
How are we going to survive it? So future-proofing, tech enablement is most definitely high on my agenda at the moment. Do we have the right operating systems? Have we got the right infrastructure to be able to run our teams? What's the future of the office? That's a really good question at the moment, because there are I've surveyed my team as well, but there's plenty of evidence on the internet through reports and papers being issued that a lot of the world is saying, I don't want to go back to the office full time. I actually quite like this remote. I've got comfortable now, and I quite like this remote working environment.
Yeah.
So I can see a blended remote in-office working environment that we create for our organisation. So that begs the question: how much space do we need?
Yeah.
Do we want to run an office that has fixed desk locations for a complement of staff, or are we going to become more of these sort of co-working, shared office working spaces where we're creating more open areas and meeting areas, but we're provisioning desks where people can come in maybe 2, maybe 3 days a week. But we've also got the right tech platforms that allow the staff and the team to work remotely, but to also be accountable for their productivity and their performance.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
What about the portfolio? Again, it's about embracing the disruption. It's about, we were a live events business. We are no longer just a live events business. We're a business intelligence organization, and we specialize in the energy space in Africa and the mining space in Africa. And I want to see our offering to companies who operate within those verticals increase, improve. I want to see us be able to service better and more comprehensively companies that spend money with us. We had previously been relationship with company, attend exhibition, buy 9 square meters, 15 square meters of space, ensure that there's a VIP buyers program, etc., a footfall of attendance that we could ensure that company has a suitable amount of visitors that comes to its stand.
Yeah.
Or we provision a content program in a conference that has a quality of speakers talking about a topic of reference that's important to that industry vertical,
right.
that are also have delegates from across Africa, continental Africa, joining in one place at one time, and then you facilitate the networking piece.
Yeah.
How do we continue with that? How do we drive more value out of the face-to-face piece or the in-person piece? But also, how do we supplement that through other channels, through webinar programs, through roundtable meetings held in a digital environment, through content pieces that are distributed through our media platforms, through relationships that position companies in the right way in front of the audience which they wish to sell to or which they wish to influence and stuff. So to me, I like the fact that we are what I would call building ecosystems. My company is a data company. We data. I talk about business intelligence, but at the center of everything we do, the nucleus,
it's essentially
is the data.
Yeah,
it's exclusively the data that we own, and the depth of that data and the enrichment of that data on companies and individuals within the industry sectors that we serve. Ultimately, so we know people better, we can serve people better, and we can really drive those industry forwards and be of value, actually. That's ultimately what we want to be. We want to be of value within those industry verticals.
I have to say it's quite infectious listening to the way that you are talking about some of the things that you want to be doing, and in a sense you've also needed to work on redefining some of those goals, of course, because that's what COVID and last year has done. It's kind of been the great leveler of all these things, and now you've got to think again, from square one. And I think a lot of people are scared and put off by that, and a lot of people are motivated and energized by that. And you're clearly in that camp, which is great. I'm interested, just sort of lastly, what personally for you, what are some of the routines, some of the things that you do, whether it's, I know that you've done breath work. I know that you're into sort of meditation. You mentioned that you've been doing coaching. You've been, on the receiving end of some coaching. What are some of the kind of the personal things that allow you to always have something to tap into? Because you're also human, and I'm sure sometimes, you arrive home from, on Friday from a long week, and you're knackered, And so how do you get back up to 100 come Monday morning again? What are some of the things you've been doing?
So it's a really good question, actually, and I like the way that's going to sort of pivot away from some of the operational business piece back onto mindfulness, well-being. Funny you talk about the breathwork piece. I did the Wim Hof experience last Wednesday down in Cape Point.
I saw a picture of you submerged in some very cold looking water.
So yeah, I did the breathwork course of Wim Hof and ended up being submerged for 3 minutes in a freezer full of ice water at 2 degrees, which was a hell of an experience. And it just goes to show testament to how powerful the breath can be to allow you to keep control of your emotions and of your physical state as well. And I have to be honest, I've done a lot of breath work over the last 12 months because there has been a lot of pressure. And I've also talked to my team, the whole team, all 90 people, about the value of breathing, about the importance of taking that breath and giving yourself time to contemplate and consider before making a decision. So breath work's important for me. Sport, physical exercise, activities. I try and get out on my mountain bike. I try and go do some trail running. I've just picked up golf clubs again for the first time in sort of 15 years.
Are you still boxing, by the way?
No, the boxing fell away with the birth of my daughter.
Right.
Because as you know, we did some boxing classes together, and it was a 6:30 start with the trainer, and 6:30 was the kind of time that Anouk was waking up as a baby, and didn't really feel it was suitable to allow Elodie to do the morning routine 3 times a week, because I was going off to get up by a boxing trainer. So that one fell away, but I've replaced it with other things, and the physical activity is really important for me, and I know my body quite well now, and I know if I've not done enough physical exercise, because I feel sluggish, I feel sour, my mood's not right, my attitude's not in the right place. So the endorphins, I guess, they're important to me. The breath work, and then the work with my coach as well. And I've been working with a guy called Mike Irving from Advanced Business Abilities for 3 years now, and we have a coach and coachee relationship. We speak every Wednesday morning for 2 hours, and he has been invaluable in teaching me the principles of good communication and the value of good communication, and how you can communicate to yourself, because we do put ourselves under huge amounts of communication by our internal communication, not even sort of words leaving lips. It's the case of the pressure you internalize. So I've learned a lot about how different words have different interpretations for people, and it's a lot about putting people at choice rather than at a point of no choice. And I can see that I've implemented a lot of the learning, and it's my commitment to ensure and my want to be able to take that on for other people as well. It's not a predetermined chapter of coaching sessions, if you like.
Yes.
There's some core principles, but a lot of our coaching sessions are very similar to this, Alex. Mike and I have a conversation, and his opening sentence nearly always is, "So how are you traveling? What's happening?"
Yeah.
And
Just
and then you
catching
kind
up.
of
Yeah.
just catching up. So what's got your attention? Oh, you know what, this has happened for me, and it just goes off in a direction, and then we inspect that
Yeah.
and picking it up, and quite often or not, he'll pick up on the way that I've phrased a sentence, or I talk to him about something that has my attention or my concern, and he'll stop me and go, "Sorry, Dave, let's just inspect what you said there." And then it just have this awareness that it starts to. Sometimes it's frustrating in many respects because it's like, God, I know.
Stop knowing me so well.
I didn't want to address that. I've been denying it, but now you kind of put the foot in the door and you're leveraging it open. So let's go in and inspect that. And that coaching piece has been really valuable for me, actually. And I think it's shaped the way that I look at our business going forward.
And how you
and the kind of business I want to run as well. And the way that I want my team to be engaged in the company. I want them to be proud of who they are and what they do for the business. And I want them to understand the value that they create and more than that, recognize the value that they create as well. I think acknowledgement and recognition from leadership to team, but also on an individual level, is such an empowering action that we don't always provide it as often as we could to people.
Yeah. And I suppose when you see some of that happen or realize in front of you, and somebody's taken to heart maybe something you've said or opened up as a result of something you put in place, whatever it might be, how little that might be, I suppose that just comes up and probably fills you with a lot of pride and a lot of contentment, satisfaction, a number of different things to see that, okay, well, maybe the things that I'm learning are also being learnt by others. And it's always that kind of thing, right? You always have the most to impart when you yourself are still a student, in that sense, when you yourself are still trying to practice and get things right and learn as much as you can.
I definitely agree with that. And I think I guess there's a role model element to it as well, isn't there? I think anyone in a leadership position is a role model to how we can behave and how we want to be seen. And then you kind of want your team to be reflective of that and people around you to be reflective of who you are as an individual or as a leader. I think it's really important. I talked about acknowledgement and recognition. And we could look back over 2020 with COVID and the remote work from home environment and the lockdowns that we've all been through across the world. One thing that's real for me, and I recognise, is the fact that I would never have had that opportunity to spend that much time with my daughter at that age, and that was special, and that was really important for me. And despite some of the early frustrations about not having the time to dedicate to my job or having to wake up earlier and finish later because I want to make space during the day for my responsibilities, it would have been very easy to go to a point of frustration by having that additional responsibility whilst having a company over here and 90 people in the organization and the revenue's fallen away completely.
The other child you're looking after.
The other side of it, two and a half year old little girl who I got to watch to grow through that period. And you've got two kids, and I know how you feel about this as well. It's being able to be there to watch that development, and I'm really thankful for that.
Absolutely priceless.
And acknowledge how priceless it is.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. And it's great to hear you mention it and talk about it. I'm sure so many people who are also parents who had to also negotiate those first few weeks where it was like, I'm not getting time, it's not happening in the way I want it to happen. But then you sort of let go and you pull back and realize, well, actually there's so many other gifts that are here ripe for the taking if you just allow yourself to take it. And what could be more precious than having all of that extra time that you wouldn't have had to, dedicate to something special like watching your kid grow up. I mean, Exactly. It doesn't get better. Yeah.
And a much healthier place to put your focus on the value that you're gaining from being with your child,
of course,
than the stress you're having in your work. Because you know what? The stress bit will work itself out. You're only going to be with your child at that age group for a certain period of time. Yeah. And funnily enough, a feel-good factor from being with your child, it might actually help you get through the stress at work even quicker.
Absolutely.
Well. Absolutely. That's been my experience anyway.
That's the teaching. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Dave, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your war stories with us, and yeah, really excited to see where where things go for you and the business in 2022 and beyond. And yeah, really look forward to seeing where that positive disruption and your really bold outlook ends up taking things. So yeah, once again, thanks for jumping on with me, Humble Pie.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the invite to Humble Pie. If it is of any value and you want to do a follow-up in 6-12 months' time, I'm more than happy to jump on. You know, I enjoy talking to you, Alex. We always have some good conversations. So, yeah, mate, always available to you.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much for joining. All right.